In a distant fantasy land, powerful knights fight for the honor of their kingdoms. They wield massive, magical suits of armor in order to protect their kingdoms from rampaging beasts and invading enemy nations. But the times are changing, and one young man's ingenuity and passion for invention will spur a technological revolution. A new age dawns, igniting both the fires of discovery and the flames of war. Knights and Magic is a mecha action-adventure series about a fantasy land where the inhabitants have learned how to build giant sword-swinging robots that are powered by magic instead of electricity. The plot follows a young boy, Ernesti, who is so enthused by these mecha that he makes it his life's mission to become a master magician / engineer / pilot so that he can build the biggest and best robots that the world has ever seen. Also, he's an isekai protagonist. Why? Well, why the hell not? It has no bearing on the story, so it's just one more checkbox that we can mark off. Anyway, as the series begins, we meet Ernesti and come to learn about his almost uncomfortable obsession with giant robots. There's a few introductory episodes where Ernie goes to school, makes a few childhood friends, and it's revealed that he's basically a prodigy in everything he sets out to do. At this point, we learn that despite the fact that the knights and their giant mechanical mecha are the ones who are responsible for protecting the kingdom from the giant demons that roam the countryside, apparently nobody has tried inventing any sort of new weapons or equipment for something like 100 years. At this point, Ernie decides that it will be his calling to revolutionize their entire military-industrial complex and build every single weapon he could possibly conceive. From this point on, the series settles into a fairly formulaic plot structure, with each couple of episodes forming a little mini-arc. Essentially, during the first segment, Ernest will come up with a new mech design, at which point his co-workers and school chums will help him gather all the necessary materials and components, and then in the second segment, the mech will be revealed and then usually go through a demonstration, usually either a mock battle or, later on in the series, actual trials by fire on the battlefield. Once this process is complete, Ernesti gets a new idea, and then the whole cycle repeats itself. Over time, the scale of these demonstrations gradually spirals outward as each new weapon requires a larger and more powerful opposition in order to stay relevant. Now, what are the good parts of Knights and Magic? Well, for starters, it has very good production values. The voice acting is well done, the animation is of high quality, they have solid character and mecha designs, and there's very little uncomfortable deviation. The action sequences themselves are well composed and well edited, and the steady introduction of new weapons and designs means that you're not just seeing the same segments play out over and over. In addition, the show has incredibly smooth pacing. As I tried to explain earlier, there is a near constant cycle of preparation and then action. Our characters will encounter a new obstacle, they will then build a mech to overcome that new obstacle, there's a showcase action scene, and then they move on to the next challenge. No conflict is drawn out for longer than necessary, no character steals the show, there are no side quests or tangents. The series is almost mechanical in its approach to storytelling. Now, on the positive side, while the series has a very strong sense of progression, this form of industrial grade story structure means that while there are a lot of important things happening, not many of them are actually meaningful. There's not a lot of emotional weight to anything, and the characters don't really seem to care about what's happening in the plot. Ernest himself is a great example of this. He starts the series as a genius wonderkind who only wants to build the biggest and best giant robots in the entire world, and ends the series as that exact same person. He doesn't grow as a person, he doesn't develop as a character, and he doesn't learn anything that is not related to the development and production of giant robots.
I'm so cold and hard. My dear, you're perfect.
No fair. I would do anything for Ernesty to say that to me. Why can't I be made of metal?
And it's not much better for anybody else in the cast. Secondary characters are extremely one-dimensional. They have almost no personality. In the rare case that one of them does undergo some sort of emotional trauma, it's over and done with inside of 2 episodes. Even Ernesty's childhood friends, who, despite having the second most screen time, don't fare any better despite their proximity to greatness. Addie, in particular, cannot even comprehend that, apparently, Ernest is only sexually aroused by giant robots. Come on, man, just put her down easy. This is getting embarrassing. The best example of this is probably the final story arc of the season. Now, this might sound like mild spoilers, but as I'm about to try and explain, the context of what's happening in this plotline is honestly the least important part of it. Here's what happens. 2 neighboring kingdoms go to war, and Ernest and all of his knight buddies decide to ride to the defense of the smaller, weaker kingdom in order to protect it from its expansionist neighbor. Now, as soon as they arrive, Ernest strikes an alliance with the kingdom, and to the shock of all the nobles involved, makes it clear that he has no interest in money, land, or titles. The only thing he wants is salvage rights to all of the robots they destroy so he can use their pieces to make his new mechs. Because, remember, the only thing that matters to Ernest is making robots. And frankly, that's the only thing that matters to the series as a whole. The final story arc of this season, this massive war between 2 kingdoms, armies clashing, cities being destroyed, hundreds, if not thousands of refugees losing their homes and livelihoods. And Ernest states, in no uncertain terms, that the only reason he is participating is so that he can defeat his engineering rival on the battlefield, so that his anthropomorphic-style robots will become the dominant mecha type for future weapons development. That's it. And here's the crazy part, that as far as Knights and Magic is concerned, this gap between character and story is not even that big of a flaw. Granted, in any other anime, this callous disregard would be infuriating, but in Knights and Magic, it's borderline acceptable. And the reason is that the show is just nakedly upfront about its intentions. Episode 1, Ernesty says he wants to build a giant robot. Episode 3, he's already doing it, and then he continues to do that with inhuman regularity for the entire rest of the season. Sure, I might have preferred to have characters with deeper, layered personalities, or a setting with more elaborate, richer world building, but if a series only ever sets out to be about building bigger and better giant robots, how can I really criticize it for doing exactly that? In the end, Knights and Magic is not a fantastic mecha series, but it sets up few expectations, so there's very little to be disappointed with. I would give it 2 out of 4 stars and a possible recommendation. it's well animated, it's well paced, and I kept watching it even if it didn't win me over for its nuanced storytelling. In the end, the simple question becomes, hey, do you want to watch an anime about cool giant robots fighting to the exclusion of pretty much all other plot elements? If so, then I've got good news for you. Alright, well, thanks once again for listening to both my musings and complainings. Till next time, I gotta go power up and punch out. See you then.